I've been doing working in the ambulance industry for 13 years, doing ambulance billing. And a couple of years ago, when the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, that I'm sure everybody's heard of the Affordable Care Act, for 2010 came out, they made compliance plans mandatory for every healthcare provider. In 2003, the OIG put out a voluntary guidance plan for the ambulance service. We don't know when that mandatory is going to actually click in and when that's going to become effective, but rumor has it it's going to be very soon. I sit on the Medicare Advisory Group board for the state of Kentucky and Ohio. So they have announced that that's going to be pretty soon, that that's going to become mandatory. I have a heart for EMS because I've worked around EMS long enough. I attend the K-Beams board meetings. I attend the K-Beams directors meetings. I attend CAPA meetings. I've tried to make sure I understand what's going on, what affects you all. And I have come to decide that EMS industry is the best industry out there as far as people go. You are the most wonderful people, the most unappreciated, underpaid individuals in any healthcare profession in this country. And I want you to know that I appreciate everything that you do. You work hard, you put your life on the line, you give all that you have to take care of patients, and I don't think enough people say thank you. And I know that you're not paid what you're worth, and it's just very sad. And because the ambulance industry is such a very, very small part of the healthcare industry overall, you all kind of get the brunt of things. It's like everything, every rule and regulation that they put out there tends to be a catch-22 for the ambulance service. They're expecting you to do what all these other healthcare providers can do, and because of your uniqueness, it's impossible for you to do. And I send emails to CMS on a regular basis complaining about what's going on, and I also attend their ambulance. They have like telephone conferences, about 3-4 times a year, where all the ambulance providers in the entire country get on and ask questions. And I always get on my soapbox during those times, and nearly everybody on there says, I agree with the person in Kentucky, I agree with the person in Kentucky. Because every ambulance provider knows you all get the shaft every time they put a rule and regulation in place. But my heart, when they came out with the Affordable Care Act, and I knew that this was going to become mandatory, my heart was as I knew that the ambulance services did not realize what all was required of them. Most of the ambulance services in Kentucky are run by the fiscal court, the county court. You're a part of the county, that industry, and the people that are in charge of that don't understand what the regulations are for healthcare providers, and that's what you fall under. So I thought, well, I need to do something. I need to quit my job and do something so we can get these ambulance services in compliance before it becomes mandatory. Because once it becomes mandatory and you wait to that point, if you're audited, it's going to assume, if they find a mistake, that you were committing fraud because you waited until it was mandatory to do anything about it. If you have a voluntary plan in place that they know you had in place before you became mandatory and they find anything out, then they're going to assume it was a mistake. So that's huge. That is a big difference. And so I wanted to help get the ambulance services on a compliance plan. So I want to welcome you to your first compliance training. I'm considering, and right now there is nobody that is doing this in the tri-state area. There's nobody that's going out trying to help ambulance services come compliant. So Allen County Ambulance Service is going to be the first ambulance service in Kentucky with an actual working compliance plan and a working program. So you're going to be a benchmark. So that's exciting. So I'd like to welcome you to your first, not your only, but your first compliance plan. Okay, so today's overview, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to familiarize you with the Code of Conduct. So Allen County Ambulance Service has come up with a Code of Conduct that the OIG recommends for healthcare providers. So we're going to be handing that out, and we're going to go over that, because in order to be compliant, there are certain character qualities that they're expecting of the healthcare employees. And so we're going to be going over that, because that is the benchmark of a compliance plan, is understanding that your character understands what is necessary of you and what you need to do in order to make sure you're doing things above board, in line with rules and regulations. The number two is we're going to be teaching you on documentation, what's required in your documentation and how you need to take pride in that information that you're doing. And the third thing we're going to do is we're actually going to go over some of the laws and regulations and how they affect you all, so that you are familiar with those. So we want you to be compliant minded. Okay, so our first thing is our Code of Conduct. So we have gone through and we have set up several different policies, and we're going to be going over those and procedures for Allen County Ambulance Service. And this is going to be kind of the format, because basically as rules and regulations change, so do your policies and procedures. You're going to need to sign the end of this after we go off and go through this. So basically the purpose of the Code of Conduct is to provide guidance to all of our colleagues and assist us in carrying out our daily activities within appropriate ethical and legal standards. These obligations apply to our relationships with patients, affiliated physicians, third-party payers, subcontractors, independent contractors, vendors, consultants, and one another. The Code is a critical component of the Allen County Ambulance Service, hereinafter referred to as Company, overall ethics and compliance program. We have developed the Code to ensure we meet our ethical standards and comply with applicable laws and regulations. The policy is that we are committed to providing ethical and professional services. We respect each and every patient we work with and pledge to treat one another with loyalty and dignity and act with absolute honesty, integrity, and fairness in the way we conduct our business and the way we live our lives. The guidelines, and these are different things. We have leadership responsibilities. We have fundamental commitment to those we work with. You have legal and regulatory compliance. You have business information and information systems, and this is going to be accuracy, retention, and disposal of documents and records. Information security and confidentiality. It's extremely important that you understand how your username and your password to get onto WebEMT in order to fill out your run documentation, that username and password can only be known to you. That is very important with compliance. And because your username and your password is actually being used as your signature for that documentation, so it makes it even more important that the security level of that is critical. So if you haven't done so, you may need to go in and change your username and password so that you know that nobody else knows that. It's unique to you, and I recommend that you change that password every 90 days. So you need to be really watching for that. Do not give anybody else your username and password. That is a total violation of security laws under HIPAA, under HITECH, and under your compliance program. So you need to be very, very careful and guard that username and password. Electronic media, all communications, you should never, ever, ever be emailing any kind of information that has a patient's name, address, social security number, medical information, insurance information, anything like that. Fax is considered a more secure method, or you can use those Cisco, those email things where you have to have a username and a password to open it up on the other end. So that's okay, but just regular email, scanning something, emailing it. Should never let anybody ask you to do that. And then we have your normal harassment and workplace violence kind of thing. And here's the critical part, is enforcement. An individual's failure to live up to these policies may result in disciplinary action, including suspension, termination, and/or monetary fines consistent with company's billing policy and applicable state and federal laws. For violations of applicable state and/or federal laws, individuals may also face criminal and civil and monetary penalties. All new hires are required to sign a copy of the Code of Conduct during their new hire training. Any employee found in violation of any applicable state and/or federal law will face immediate termination and possible prosecution by appropriate legal authorities. I want you to understand that compliance, according to CMS, according to the Office of Inspector General, every regulatory law out there takes it very, very seriously. And if you are doing something that is not considered a part of those laws or can be interpreted as fraud and or abuse, it does not necessarily come just back on the ambulance service. They do penalize individuals if they believe that individual knowingly and willfully committed fraud. So False Claims Acts, all of these things take into place. So it's very important that when you're doing your documentation, and we'll go over some key areas of documentation on what is expected of you, what is required by you by state and federal laws, and what's required of you by Allen County Ambulance Service at this point in time, effective this day forward. So we'll need you to sign those, and then Brittany will, when she gets back to the office, she will make copies. You all will have a copy, and a copy will be kept in your employee file. Okay, documentation. We will be going over specific documentation, the patient care report, exactly what we are looking for and what is critical information. We're hoping to give you some guidance so that you don't get out in the field and go, oh, what do I do in this situation? We're hoping to be able to have enough policies and procedures in place that eventually, no matter what kind of situation you run upon, you're going to know exactly what you need to do. Laws, regulations, and policies. We will be going over a lot of different laws, regulations, and policies that you probably could care less about, but sometimes there's a little bit of information in there that is going to be essential for you to know, and we've kind of broken it down. Now, I gave Ed and Mark and Brittany an 80-page document that they have to go through, so consider yourselves a little bit lucky here that you're not having to go through some of the things that I put them through this morning. Our learning objectives is going to be policies, procedures, and the benefits. Now, one of the things that I did, I'm used to being in front of children when I do demonstrations. So my sons, who are 29 and 30 now, was really concerned that you all were going to feel like children when I got up here and talked. You know, they just said, no, Mom, don't do that, don't do that. They will not like that. So I tried to tell them just how wonderful you guys were, and you really wouldn't care what I did, that you would really enjoy it anyway. So I came up with 3 different qualities that we're going to discuss at different times, but just kind of wanted to give you a way of learning how to become a leader, a way of looking at your job, looking at your responsibilities to be able to further yourselves. So basically, attentiveness is the key to learning. I'm actually a certified character coach, believe it or not, and used to do assemblies all around the place, but attentiveness is the key to learning. So I did this little poem. I will look at someone speaking and I'll listen all I can. I will sit or stand up straight like a soldier on command. I will not draw attention. I will guard it against distraction. I will learn to ask the questions that will help me understand. It's very, very important in order to be successful in anything that you pay attention when somebody's trying to teach you something, because that is the key to learning. And I actually have hand motions that go through this, and another little thing at the end that says commitments are important steps to guard us from disasters, and just to show we know them well, let's say them even faster. And kids love it, but I'm not going to put you all through that. But I just want you to understand how important attentiveness is. And plus, it's something you can teach your kids if you have any children. So we've gone over the code of conduct, and basically what I would like to see is that you take that code of conduct, and it's going to be missions and values on everything we go through. And so what is your commitment to this code of conduct? This commitment needs to be high. Your commitment to Allen County Ambulance Service and the job that you perform for them needs to be a high commitment. So we need to figure out what it is that you need to do in order to go from a low, a medium, and get to a high type of commitment on how you perform for this company. Because let me tell you, if the government comes in and audits and they find anything wrong, they could put this company out of business in a heartbeat. An ambulance service earlier this year settled for $5.7 million. The majority of the things they found was regarding the PCS. And you all know how hard that is. And some other documentation that was going. Something like that would put Allen County out of business and nobody would have a job. So this is important, very important, for you to be committed to the code of conduct, learning the policies and procedures, and if you have any questions whatsoever, make sure you're asking. On the code of conduct, we need to be committed to providing ethical and professional services, respect for patients. And the thing is I know that you guys already do this. I know that you already do this. I was in billing long enough to get calls, get letters, and see letters from patients on how much they love you guys. And so I know that you do this, but I just want you to understand to keep doing it and try to set the bar a little bit higher. Treat each other with loyalty and dignity. Act with honesty, integrity, and fairness. Comply with all applicable laws and regulations. And most important, stay informed, because things change on a regular basis. And I will make sure that I'm getting in touch with these three on a regular basis anytime I hear something that's coming up changing. So working toward compliance, we're going to be attentive, we're going to respect, and we're going to achieve compliance. Our other character quality as we go into documentation is truthfulness. Because what you put on that document needs to be truthful. Above everything else, it needs to be truthful. And the more that you can put on that document, the better. The more accurate you can be, the more of a picture you can paint. You just can't put too much on there, because in 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, when that document comes into question, the more you can put in it that triggers a memory for you, the better it's going to be. Because if you have very little on there, you're not going to remember what it was. But you need to paint a picture that you will remember no matter when. So truthfulness is actually earning future trust by accurately reporting past facts. And in your case, it's accurately reporting current and past facts. I will always tell the truth, even when it's hard to do. I'll encourage those around me so that they'll be truthful too. I'll admit when I am wrong. I will not exaggerate. That is so important in a run documentation, is to not exaggerate. Stick to the facts. And though I may be tempted, I will never steal or cheat. And obviously, when you're dealing with some of the drugs that you all keep around, it's real important that they can make sure that they can account for everything that's used, so we have to watch for that. So our documentation. Again, we're accurately painting the picture. What is your commitment to that? Is your commitment, because I know that you all got into this business because you loved working with people and you wanted to help people. And that's the reason that you got into this business, which is very admirable. The problem is, along with that comes a ton of documents that nobody wants to fool with, nobody wants to deal with, but it has to be done in order to keep this ambulance service afloat and keep your job. So even though you just kind of want to hurry up and write something down there and get out of there, we can't do that. It is so important that you put as much information on there and be as objective as possible. You don't want to put your thoughts, your opinions, your ideas. It's, this is what I saw, this is what I did, this is the results. Purely. But every single thing that you saw, that you did, and the results. You can't leave anything out. So I want to see everybody have a high commitment to accurately painting the picture on your documentation. Documentation. Committed to providing an accurate patient care report that paints the picture of what happened and what was done. Carefully assess the patient's condition as it relates to the dispatch complaint. So that is another thing that we're going to need to tell you that you need to start doing. Is in your narrative, it is extremely important that you put the dispatch complaint in your narrative, because there's nowhere on your patient care report that allows you to pick something from a pick list and list a dispatch complaint. And that dispatch complaint is very important. The reason being is that Medicare understands that the 911 system gets abused. And so that's nice that they finally understood that and changed the law several years ago. So they know that's being abused. So what they're allowing you to do is, however that dispatch complaint came in, let's say it was chest pain that came in. So you have to send a paramedic, and you have to send a paramedic immediately, because an EMT basic can't assess a chest pain, because there may be things that need to be done that only the paramedic can do. So the paramedic has to go out to that run. You get out there, and it wasn't really the chest pain, the person just needed to get somewhere, and they just have a foot pain. Well, you no longer need a paramedic. The EMT basic could have taken care of that. However, because the paramedic needs to assess the patient anyway, because that's going to be a protocol. It was called in as chest pain, so you're going to have to assess the patient and find out it was just a foot pain. But Medicare will actually pay at that ALS level because of how that was dispatched. So it's important that they know that dispatch complaint in order to be able to get you an ALS rate instead of a BLS rate. So from now on, starting immediately, at the beginning of your narrative, how did you say you wanted them to?
We had discussed call received per dispatch, chest pain, shortness of breath, whatever dispatch tells us the complaint is, whether it be unresponsive, whatever. That is what has to be the first line of our narrative.
And then Ed brought up that sometimes, depending on how that call comes in, they don't really give you a complaint. So in that case, you're going to put dispatch complaint not available. Okay? And that way, that leaves it open to whatever situation you find out once you get there, then the ALS and BLS can be determined at that point. So, but that narrative has to have that.